I would challenge people when you initially get the thought to go do something or create something or move or work out or eat healthy, whatever it is, to fucking go. And because you need to realize who you're fighting, and you're fighting your physiology. And the reason you're fighting your physiology is because we live in a world now where everything, all of our bare necessities are handed to us.
Brian Peters, welcome to the podcast. So grateful and honored for you to be here. I really appreciate you.
Easy, man. I'm excited to join.
Brian, what is it actually like to play in the NFL? Because there's a lot of people out there who's watching. They're when kids are growing up in the United States of America, they're saying to themselves, "Oh, I'd like to do that someday." I know in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was like, "I'd like to play in the NFL someday." But what is it actually like? What's it actually like to be in the NFL?
Yeah, it's pretty cliche to say it's a dream come true in that essence, but I took the scenic route to get there too, and I didn't grow up dreaming to be a NFL football player. I actually wanted to be an MLB baseball player, and I just knew I could perform at that level probably since I was young. So the manifestation of that same moment, despite not like dreaming of that as a kid, but it's still, people feel it in different ways, shapes, and forms. And some people say like the only other times outside of like playing pro football is like having a kid or being married, like that level of high. So like it's a sensation thing where it's, I think anybody that puts a lifetime of work together and then gets to reap the rewards, even if it's just one game of the crowd cheering, I think, and like putting the jersey on and telling the story to your kid or whoever one day, like I think that is how it feels, I guess. Like I think everybody can relate to that, whether like whatever they put their heart and soul into for years and years and years, and it materializes, like that's the exuberance you feel. And then it's just like outside of that, it's still same thing. Like I think people put it too high on a platform. Honestly, it's just a bunch of guys being dudes and a bunch of really high performers, and you see the separation in great performers, and you see why people wash out. Same as any other industry, and then even like socially, like sometimes football players get a bad name, and there's the stereotypes of big dumb jock and those kind of things. But I've met some of the most incredibly intelligent folks in a locker room, and it's the same outside, like it's the same sample of another industry where like, yeah, they're 95% great humans. There's some bad humans everywhere, and then there's some just amazing, incredible humans there too. So it's just like I think if like people love the sport and respect it and see all the flash and the glitz and glamour and money and contracts and all that kind of stuff, but I still think that respecting the humans that are playing and understanding that it's just like a bunch of people pursuing and working their butt off and to like earn an income and live a dream. Granted, it's a kid's game amplified into like a multi-billion-dollar platform, but it's still just, again, it's a bunch of guys trying to do their best, and they're winging it and pursuing and being curious and competing. And I think every human's winging it, and I think people lose sight of that sometimes when they look at NFL players.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's going through your head the first time you step on an NFL field?
I mean, it's probably the first time is probably like the juiciest event where it's just like, okay, like, oh shit, like let's go. And it's just like, and you just got to go. And like, I was lucky. My first play was a kickoff. So I just like that's an all gas, no brakes kind of play. So I just buckled up. And when I actually made the first play, I made the tackle on kickoff. So I was hyped up. But yeah, but then after that, it's funny how much the crowd and everything washes away, and you're trying to communicate, you're trying to execute, you're trying to use best practices and improve and adapt throughout the game. And like I get asked a lot here, like how crazy was it with the noise and all these kind of things, and you really don't even hear stuff. Like you hear like communication on your team, and you're literally just out there doing a job and trying to execute. It's fun for sure. There's a lot of fun jobs, but like it's I think it's pretty cool how many people can put, or like just how the environment and the task at hand can put blinders on you.
You mentioned you made a tackle in your first ever play. That's pretty wild. And then I think in 2015 you actually led the NFL in special teams tackles. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It's like, what does that feel like? Because it must be. Was that something you were really proud of, and was that something that was an accomplishment that you were like, wow, like I can't believe I did this? Or how did that imprint on you after that happened?
Yeah, and funny thing is, I actually didn't even know that till after the last game that I played. I wasn't like measuring myself against others, and there's a cool little lesson for me in that or in that aspect where I had some really good coaches where initially when I got there late too. I only played 12 of the 16 games that season. So like I was on pace to like have that title kind of in essence. I think I was tied for the title that year, but besides the point, I had really good coaches that like kept my head down and focused me on the task. And my task and my niche that I walked into with the Texans was special teams. And so that's kickoff return, punt return. And really the only statistic there that shows up on a stat line is tackles. And the aspect that I was hot on when I came down there is they didn't have any leaders in the special teams department. And I came from a really great program with the Minnesota Vikings that offseason. And I just, like, I saw the void, I grasped it, and I went and worked. And the coaches steered me towards that leadership role. And then they poured gas on the fire. And, like, Mike Vrabel, I tell this story a decent amount where I enjoy it. But, like, we're sitting there and I was new. My football career, I transitioned. I played safety in college, and then I used this whole saga of a story through the Arena Football League, United Football League, Canadian Football League for 3 years, back to the NFL. I used that time to turn into a linebacker and gain 20 pounds and get faster, stronger. But like I wasn't a veteran, experienced linebacker. I was still learning some of the nuances of the position. But when I got down there, like I was kind of sitting there and I like didn't understand one of the run plays. And it was just me and him. He stayed late to break down film with me, and he kind of just like turned over to me like we're both sitting there, both just chugging caffeine, watching film at like 7:30 at night. And he goes, "Peters," he goes, "You're either going to be the best linebacker, or you can do something different." And he goes, "You better do something different, bud." And he goes, "You need to take the reins on special teams." And so like 3 games in down there, when I was just worried about making the team or not making the team, but maintaining my position on the team, because I was on the practice squad in Minnesota and got signed off after week 3 by the Houston Texans. And that was a cool point in my career anyways, where I had to gamble on myself, because the Vikings were offering to like pay me full active salary, so like $500,000 to stay in Minnesota on their practice squad, not active, not the ability to accrue anything for like 401k and anything, whatever. But it was basically a guaranteed $500,000, or I could take the opportunity to go down and be on the Texans active roster, and their only requirement is to keep me for 3 games, so I can like pan out or not pan out, and like that's and for me. Like I was my agent, like I didn't even get a chance to talk to coaches in Minnesota. I hopped in an Uber, went to the airport, and we're figuring it out and talking to coaches on both teams on the way down. And in essence, like I had the choice between $500,000 guaranteed or this $3 million, probably like, I don't know, like 45K to go and basically try out on active roster. But the little nuance in there is active roster is only 46 of the 53, so 7 guys don't even dress. So I could have been there, and they picked up somebody else, and I was gone. And I got on. I think I was just soul searching at the airport, and my buddy called me, and he goes, "Dude, what are you doing? Like you spent 3 years in 3 different leagues to go play in the NFL, not practice in the NFL." And I was like, "My guy," clicked the phone and hopped on the plane, and it worked out. But like, I was still in the phase when Vrabel gave me that advice that like the GM and the pro personnel guy were still walking by me in the cafeteria and saying, you gotta work with your hands more if you want to stick around. And they're keeping that fire lit just out of fear. And then, but Vrabel, then we had a coach Lig, our special teams coach at the time. They locked me in, kept my head down, and it like that year just kind of took care of itself.
The advice of you have to be the best or be different is something I think I saw you tweet about as well. Yeah. So it clearly stuck with you at a deep level. How do you then take that and apply that lesson from the NFL to then post NFL?
Yeah, and it's a great lesson. Just like I do think the quotations on the best should be there, because like best is always going to be subjective in that sense of like like it does. You don't have to be the most productive to be the best, and like that's why I like the nuance of do something different, or even like the Naval Ravikant bit, who's one of my favorite humans, where he like you can be the best at something by refining yourself so particularly that nobody can compete with you. And then I get into the nuance of like everyone is actually incredibly unique and authentic. Every human on the planet is a one-time phenomenon in this world. And so we're already unique. And our problem is we compare and contrast and start doing this hierarchy, and I'm the best, I'm only third best shit. Like, and it gets into this it's not like there's a variant of analysis by paralysis there, but like the problem with that is that we're not looking at the gifts that we do bring to the table when we try and fit ourselves in these cookie cutters. And that's where like when I'm coaching guys and like I'm addressing myself, I'm not always striving to be the best. Sometimes there's always more tactics than just like the one. Like it's like you don't just have a hammer and everything's a nail. You literally have options always, and one of the best options is to be uniquely yourself. And if you can sit still and listen to yourself and realize what you really want, now you can start refining, and now you can start separating yourself. And everybody is separated, but it's just it's funny how quickly we can get that confused.
Yeah, well, our society has set us up so that we are on the conveyor belt from the time we're in kindergarten. Everyone goes to first grade. Everyone goes to, oh, you didn't go to eighth grade? What's wrong with you? Oh, but your path is very much one of the, no one has had Brian Peters' path to the NFL or otherwise in general. So it raises, you knew you were different in some way because you were going to all these different leagues and with the hope or with the idea of one day making it to the NFL. So that, you're unique. What do you say to people who maybe are in college, graduating, and they're like, well, what do you mean I'm unique? Like I've just done the same exact things as everyone else.
Yeah, and that's it's actually a really funny point where I just like, as everybody transitions through life, I always just stoke the fire of curiosity in them, but also like self-reflection massively, because like the only underlying thing that kept me going through like 3 leagues and even getting cut in Minnesota. I mean, I got cut everywhere. I got cut in the UFL, got cut in the CFL. Got obviously been cut in the NFL as well. But in that capacity, like it's really about what you know about yourself, and that's why knowing yourself is so important. Like, I was lucky enough to get some like workouts right after I finished college. I got no calls on draft day and those kind of things, but I was lucky enough to work out for some people, and through competitive comparison, I knew I could play. And that then like part of this whole journey was like fear of being on the conveyor belt. So like I didn't want to have a normal job because I knew like my capability wasn't normal for some reason, and may have been psychosis in there a little bit, but in that realm, I felt like I knew I could play, and I needed another opportunity to kind of satisfy like what my view of my potential was, and I was willing to go to hell and back for it. And so I went through all these leagues, and I played for $300 a week in the Arena League, and I became my own agent, got myself to the Canadian League, and things like that, where it's just like probably not normal or not like on the cookie cutter path of, okay, college, I get my call on draft day, I go to the NFL. Like I wasn't lucky enough for that, but like, again, life isn't fair in that capacity, but I was able to will it to some extent, and opportunity shined, and I was prepared for them, so it ended up working out.
What goes through your mind when you get cut?
The first thing's like, fuck, like it kind of stings, just because one of the hardest times getting cut for me was from the United Football League, the UFL, which a league that no longer exists, and it was a league I didn't want to be in, and kind of this really weird transition between the UFL and the CFL. Basically, that first time being cut, I thought football is over. I cried in my car after getting cut. I was like, I'm driving back to Chicago with no money in the bank, and just like, oh, I got to figure it out. I got to go get a normal job or whatever. And I was just dealing with all the negative sides of failure. And then I was lucky enough. Eventually, I was working 3 jobs in Chicago, and then was lucky enough to my email got responded to by the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and I went to the CFL. But one quick lesson I learned from getting cut from that job, basically getting cut from a job I didn't want, is to basically never be bigger than a job that I'm holding. Like, because obviously the goal was the NFL, but like you can't look over the step you're on. And so I started embodying who I was in front of everybody and on every team, and then kind of in that same essence is where my podcast Chasing Edges and my mindset and my company was born, because and right when I got cut, I was like, I need to be better. How do I get better? I need to work on these X amount of things, and X amount of things wasn't just football tactics, skills, and strength. It was literally my entire perspective and every recovery modality I was using, and budgeting how much money I needed to pay for all these things and that kind of thing. So I need to keep chasing edges. And if I get all these edges stacked up, and I can't remember what book I read, but I learned about the aggregation of marginal gains. I go, there's not a big difference between me and these guys. I got to close the space. And so I was like, I looked for every edge. I had great doctors in my corner, and I kept getting the opportunity. And when the opportunity came, I made some plays and kept climbing that staircase.
Yeah. So going back on the piece of getting cut, I remember very specifically getting cut from the 7th grade basketball team, and just like I cried. Like we can both relate to that feeling of like just being absolutely like your world is over in that moment. And I'm curious, like, what do you think's going on there? Like, why do you think it hits us at such a deep level when we get cut, particularly from a sports team?
Yeah, I think it's just the meaning we put behind it, and even so young, like I think it's great to be cut young, honestly, just because it's like a grit concept where like you say, like same as like your jobs as a kid are important. I just think it teaches us really quick that we can't always get what we want, but if it means something to us, you'll find it out, and like you'll pursue it and you'll solve the problem. Or you'll start to separate yourself through specificity and become very uniquely different. But like I just think that level, because like we're just still trying to find our identity that early, and when somebody tells you you're not good enough that early, like it's gonna shake your identity. Which sometimes that identity doesn't get shaken until after a guy finishes Division I football, and that kind of thing. Where it's like, okay, you can learn to adapt earlier, and just because of the system and the conveyor belt that we live on, and no student left behind, or all these other programs that just coddle people forwards, I think the earlier exposure to that failure, I think will help you solve problems faster. You become more adaptive faster. Because like similar to you, like I've heard a lot of very high performers have got. I mean, you hear the Michael Jordan story is one of the most infamous stories of getting cut, and I think he was junior high or freshman year of basketball, whatever it was, but. Like, I think that, like, literally builds monsters. Like, and that's where, like, if you can, because, like, most of the most resilient players I've been around, too, like, some of them come from all different backgrounds, but they all have a narrative that was rooted in failure. Even, like, the J.J. Watts of the world. Like, went to Central Michigan playing tight end, like, didn't like the fit, went back and grinded and found some grit delivering pizzas, and then obviously became the legend that he is. And Michael Jordan stands out, like those kind of things. But like I literally have different high school friends that got, like, my first year playing football, I made the team, and one of my buddies, like one of my best friends who've been playing since he could ever put pads on, got cut. But like that fueled his massive monster in him, and he became a great player. And so just like I think people don't respect the obstacles and the adversity that does show up, but I mean, we can't see that when we're that young. We're just crushed and ashamed, and have to figure out if you're really not good enough and you're gonna quit, or you're gonna keep go play in the rec league for a year, hone your skills, and come back.
Yeah, I mean, in that moment in 7th grade for me, it was like I didn't even know there was a possibility to get better. So like it was just like, all right, this is the way it is. I didn't know, like, oh, if I put in the work towards something, I'm going to get better at it. And if I spend more time on it, just didn't click for me like that at that young. And it's interesting. Like when we speak about adversity, and we speak about the things that you are currently overcoming in the past year, what has been the biggest adversity that you've had to really try to get to the next level on?
Yeah, one of the biggest pieces of adversity has been, as far as business relationships, it stands out the biggest. My business partner, where we started the Mindstrong Project together, we basically built it from nothing from like 2015, 16 on, and we got some success in the coaching, breathwork, and physiology, and then we got to where we wanted to be, and he chose to leave. and I had put a lot of trust and support in that realm and understanding like what a business relationship and a partner and a teammate do. And I realized how, in essence, unprepared I was in the world of business, where I was still applying tools from sports that didn't apply to the rules of business. And so in that realm, like I reevaluated how I approach business partners. Like it's no longer just a teammate mentality. Like there's boundaries, and I still believe. Some people say you can't do business with friends, but I do thoroughly believe that like it is possible, but you have to do it in the right manner. And I just did that with blinders on in some capacity. So I was a little shell shocked, in essence, because it was part of the company that was leaving. But it also, I know adversity. I've been here before, and I got back into my sink of applying skills and learning knowledge, and basically getting my feet back on the ground. And now I'm wheeling and dealing and building out a new company where I thoroughly enjoy the control and direction. So it's a blessing too. So it's been fun, but like that's probably the biggest adversity I've faced this past year, just because it's probably the biggest shock as far as uncertainty goes, and in the realm of like what relationships stay, what relationships go. Even with our clients, like how do we divvy that kind of concept up, and who can say whose name and all this. It was a mess, but it ended up being a really cool opportunity for me to grow.
What's the difference between teamwork or teammates in business and teammates in the NFL or in football?
Yeah, I think like obviously like everybody, like in essence, like everybody's rowing the ship in sports. Like obviously you're getting paid from an entity as opposed to like generating income and like trying to divvy up equity on the team. It's not like the quarterback who gets paid 25 million actually does 25% of the work or something like that. I don't know a better analogy for it right there. But yeah, there's just way more in-depth variables than understanding, again, a conveyor belt where how, in essence, how everybody is acting and the direction everybody's going, because the structure's built in. You have the boundaries on what we're struggling for, how we're going to get there, what problems and questions are going to come up in generality. And when business translates, there's people like I think there's obviously selfishness in football and that kind of deal too, but the understanding of people's wants and needs and what they're getting at, and then also have to dealing with who gets credit, who created this, how to tangibilize intangibles in the realm of equity, I think was a big separator, where like everybody really knows their equity because the team dictates it, or they brought you there based on this value. And then now there's competition in there to earn opportunities, same as there is in like a two-man business. But I thought that was definitely a separator. But as far as business goes, I do think the level of trust is different than like trusting a guy to make the call here and there, where like we had in my business experience, again, very limited, but we had both very similar skill sets, and we didn't have to communicate in the essence of like the product and the service. We had to communicate on all the things that each of us either didn't want to do, or like it became like a tipping balance of who's doing the things that nobody wants to do. So I learned how to communicate outside of like a sports environment to get these goals completed. But it just ended up being more friction, where even like looking back, and I journaled through all this probably majority of the 5 years. The problems that led to this event eventually have been going on the whole time, and I just turned a blind eye to it, just because I was in essence trying to compensate for the time where I was playing football and wasn't like an active member and generating income for the company, just attention and support. And so now it just turned into like my own self-analysis.
Journaling, something that when I was doing research for this, you bring up time and time again. It seems like it's been a really pivotal part of your life. Why has journaling played such a role, and how do you journal effectively?
Yeah, and again, like it's kind of like telling somebody to meditate. You don't want to program anybody to figure out how their journal works for them. You just expose them to the magic of it, and it takes with some, it doesn't take with others, but it's trial and error for a long time. But I learned really early on that like I carried a lot of weight on my shoulders as far as like trying to solve a lot of problems at a lot of like all the time, and just starting to journal. One of the easiest things I do is ask myself why I feel these things, and I just keep playing the why game and work myself through my problems. And this is before I'd attempted therapy, in that essence, not attempted therapy, but went to therapy to, again, try and get new structures for my solutions in my head. And so one of the first things, like, I just felt better after I journaled. And I was able to come to some solutions because I didn't realize, oh, I'm probably getting frustrated because I'm actually, like a lot of your interactions are mirrors of what your insecurities are in that realm. So I was getting mad when people weren't doing what I hypocritically wanted to be doing. And this is early on. And then as I grew through it, I went through gratitude phases in my journal. I went through action. I went through journaling at night and holding my day under review. I did this whole massive variant. And then now I just constantly, my big thing with the journaling, even with the guys I coach in that realm, is the constant revisiting of your purpose, your why, what you're willing to struggle for. I think one of the biggest things, like, complacency and distraction breeds everywhere in our society right now, and everywhere in high competition and high performers. And if you're trying to do big things, particularly professional sports or business executives, which are most of my clientele in that realm, you got to know why you're doing it to keep gas on the fire. And like, if you have built-in responsibility where you know you have to perform too, it's obviously effective too. But I think revisiting that purpose and even trying to, like, negotiate through it and add more value to it and attach more meaning to things in your life, I think that's a worthy endeavor in the realm where it's like, basically, like, who am I? Like, what is my purpose? And then, in essence, where am I going and what am I doing about it? And life's not too much more complicated than that in that realm. So, but the more and constant, like, the constant ask of that, and I like guys to establish, like, kind of how I approach because I am a breathwork and mental skills coach in that realm. Most people, I come to me or I go and speak primarily about breathwork and physiological control for state control, in essence, in their system. But it doesn't take me a long time to articulate the skills and give guys protocols in that realm. So if they keep working with me, it bleeds quickly into life coaching and philosophy and competitive mindset stuff, because you can't really even talk about physiology without talking about psychology. So it's kind of like this merging of worlds. And how I approach it with my guys and my girls, etc., is like, have you ever heard I think it's a parable of the Rottweiler and the King's Jewels?
No, I don't think so.
So it's just a cool little nuance where basically this king kept being robbed, and people were taking things from him. So he started putting all his necklaces and his rings and his jewels on this Rottweiler at night. And then obviously nobody kept stealing the jewels. So in that realm, like, I'm the Rottweiler for my athletes and my clients in that realm, where tell me your goals and tell me your values and your standards. I'll hold on to those and I'm going to hold them accountable. Nobody's going to steal them, but most of all, you're not going to steal them from yourself. And because, like, again, like the distractions and the drift to failure that occurs in life and anything in standards, whether it's like your health, production, finances, whatever it is, like, it's really easy to that get lost out of this purpose lane that I like to talk about. But in that realm, like, people need a pit bull, people need a Rottweiler to hold on to their stuff and protect it, because, like, life is chaotic. And so in that realm, like, yeah, journaling is a way to do that and be that Rottweiler for yourself. And then the coolest part about it, and like that, the reason why I want everybody to journal, is you're keeping your personal history of your perspective. And we like to track everything. We like to track heart rate. We like to track our bank account. We like to track how many followers we have, whatever, downloads, you know the drill. Yeah. But we don't track our human perspective, and it's so subjective day to day, based off our sleep, based off of who comes into our lives, all these things. But like how the events of the world are changing, our perspective changes. And the coolest thing that I've seen is like going back and seeing that I've solved some of my problems, or that I still have the same problem. And then there's like, so it's just like that person, nobody else is going to write your personal history for you unless you go win like Super Bowls, you become like an autobiography worthy human, you know? So like, why would you not write it for yourself? And now, like, now we start getting that circle a little wider. Well, I'm writing it for my loved ones to, like, one, evaluate our relationships in real time, and where can I be better for them or add value, or how much do I love them and why. And like just articulating that reminds you of the value and meaning of that relationship. So I think it's really powerful in that essence, but it just kind of goes overlooked at times where there's a couple. I found some nuanced stories too. I had Bert Soren on my podcast a while back, and one of his buddies, so older guy, I think he's in his 50s, journaled for like 5 minutes every day in his phone, in his notes, to his kids, just telling, hey, why am I proud of my kids today? Why do I love my kids? And then he unfortunately passed away like very suddenly, and his kids found the notes, and literally years and years of notes to his kids that meant the world to them. And I'm not saying like everybody has to journal just for their kids or anything like that, but like I freaking love my grandpa. He's one of the biggest influences on my life. Lost him way too soon to different cancers from smoking and all those kind of things. But I would give the world if he kept a journal. I would love to know what he thought and how he thought, because in the very microscopic amount of time that I got with him in the scheme of things, like I learned so much just from his like simple, clean view of life. And so like I just think that he refined that some way, shape, or form. I'd love to know how he got there. And I mean, same like podcast, a version of that where you can get some of that out of people. So like I hope everybody has a podcast. I hope everybody keeps a journal. But I hope my loved ones and like people I care about and want to succeed have that value in their life. And at the cost of 5 to 10 minutes a day, I think is worth it. And just the ability to track your subjective experience, to go back, like that makes more sense to me too. Just in the essence where people, our memory just plays these massive tricks on us where we don't even remember everything accurately, or we try and our memory gets handcuffed by our vocabulary too, where you asked me about my first like playing in the NFL. Like I wish I would have journaled more about that, because I could go back and tell you accurately first person, and now I have to go back. Well, I mean, it was in Atlanta. It was fun. Like, yeah, I made the first tackle. How was I feeling? Like, did I really break this down? Like, or am I remembering? And that's like 18 words to describe one of my favorite experiences on the planet. And that sucks. So like to go back and like, okay, I can go through this whole deal and I can know how I felt, and I can probably tell the story better. And maybe I want to tell my story someday. So how, like, here's the accurate. And like, so again, I'm ranting, but it's important just because I think it's super valuable. And people just overlook it because I don't know, it gets linked in with diarying, being like carrying a diary sometimes. But big proponent, and I just think people sleep on the value of it. But particularly high performers, I think it's a lot of high performers are pretty private humans, so they won't trust people outside of their small circle at times. So I treat it as a therapist, and like I went to therapy as I was transitioning out of football, just because I was getting frustrated with myself and my structures and my habits that I'd let slip. And the questions I was asked in there spurred like thousands of questions in my soul. And the only person I wanted to talk to about it was myself. So I just kept writing, and and I went through some like old school Tony Robbins visualizations where I'm writing like 5, 10, 15 pages just about the girl I want to date, or the life I want to live, or the house I want to live in, and just like getting tangible visions of that. And then I kind of found my own tools in that while I'm coaching clients, where it's like we'll do a 1-year visualization. I want 7 pages on all these 4 things, and then they read them out loud. Again, I'm the Rottweiler. I'm protecting it. Like I'll sign NDAs if I have to. It doesn't matter. Like all these things, but I can look at your vision in the future. Like your perfect day in the future is a very easy one to do. What's your perfect day a year from now? Like when you wake up, like what are the colors of the sheets? What girl am I next to? What am I saying to her? Like what am I eating for breakfast? Like who do I talk to? Who's my best friend? Like how do I speak to my kids? Whatever it ends up being, but like incredibly detailed. I can pull so many physiological things that I can apply to your life right now that I know calm you down, bring you peace, or what you want. And so like now you can start giving people tools from these visualizations, and then also it's the same as goal setting. It shows you the difference between where you are and where you want to be. You're not having these relationships and these interactions right now. You're not going to this job is usually a big one. Things like that, where it's just like, okay, something to think about, but it's also, again, you need to sit down and invest in yourself and your perspective and where you're going, and always return to it. And now these visualizations get more tangible and real.
When you went to therapy and you said there was a bunch of different questions that they asked you that made your head go in 1,000 different directions and really enlightened you to your own reality. As somebody who loves questions myself, I'm curious if any of those come to mind or were incredibly helpful. You just mentioned a few in that it was, what's your perfect day look like? That's a great question to get you in the right frame of mind. But are there any other questions that come to mind that help you achieve or go into a different mental state?
Yeah, and the therapist was awesome. She it's funny what they can, like, it's more or less, and I kind of do it when I talk to some of my different clients in that realm, where like usually like you can, one, the person will tell you where they're struggling, and then two, like you can learn really quick that like we're in our own way. And because most of us have the capability to solve most of our own problems, but we lack perspective. And it gets into the realm of like Einstein's quote where you can't solve a problem that was created with the same level of, or you can't solve a problem that was created with the same level of consciousness that created it. So you need to increase your consciousness. You need to increase your ability to ask yourself questions or learn and grow so that you can solve this problem without this same one lane that created it. So that was like a big thing for me, where like honestly, like the therapist taught me to ask more questions to myself. And like some of the questions were like, like, why were you ashamed of this? Why are you frustrated with this? And it was going through my emotional spectrum, like, why does this, like, just literally every emotion in the book. And then we just kept playing, like, in essence, the why game there, which is what I'm doing in my journal. But a lot of it got back to like toughness, different variants of where I thought I was insecure, couldn't like prove myself anymore because I didn't have football. So in that realm, but then the coolest part about it was understanding, and this took me down my own psychological endeavors and rabbit holes in essence, because I was frustrated at how many of the things that I was holding on to, and the, like, in essence, the level of consciousness that I had, that was because of things that happened when I was a child. And that was the hardest pill for me to swallow, because I've been such a person where it's like, I have no responsibility to be who I was 5 minutes ago. I can recreate myself. I can do X, Y, and Z. But I held the same responses to different conflicts and scenarios that I just was unaware of. So I was increasing my consciousness by this game. So a cool little deal is like looking back on your life and figuring out like where were you, in essence, like where were you ashamed, embarrassed, traumatic experiences and those kind of things, and writing letters to the kid that was experiencing it. My problem, like I cried when I struck out till I was like 11, 12 years old, something like that. And like way too late. People stopped crying way earlier than that. And I was always ashamed of it. But really, in my eyes, I wrote a letter back telling the kid that like, if I was coaching him right now, I was like, hey, dude, crying's awesome. Like all you're showing me right now is that you care, and that you care a lot. And so, okay, let's resolve that. Like, let's get over this, like, this weak Brian that you have to like overcompensate for, and you don't have to be vulnerable for. Like, okay, now we'll open the doors on that. And then same with like relationships with my parents. My parents were awesome, but I kept resentments for weird reasons. And again, just resolving that kind of those roots of some problems was massive for me. And like again, like on paper, I probably looked like I was doing fine, but like there's so many emotional levels to relationships, and so many emotional levels to like your own personal progress and perspective, where I think the only way is to ask questions. And then the more I learned about psychology, the more I learned that like the brain deletes what doesn't keep it alive. Basically, if it's not important to keep in life and death, it deletes it. And your brain, like between all your senses, takes in like 12 million bits of information, and it only holds on to what keeps you alive and what you ask questions about. And so now it's like, okay, questions are important. And I just kept going down and down and down. But yeah, I can't remember too many specific questions that my therapist asked, but it's just a gauntlet of questions that stir up so many things, and then they give the threads to pull at. And I think we can do that to ourselves. Yeah.
The threads towards childhood is something that I keep drawing myself to, from the negative experiences and the positive ones as well. Like, oh, wow, I was doing this at this age, and look where I've become and look at the relationship between that. Are there any positive childhood experience? Positive's maybe not the right word, but are there any experiences in childhood that point to somebody who was interested in high performance, or somebody other than sports, let's say, like, or anything come to mind in particular? Because sports is the obvious one, the through line, but are there any other dots that connect?
It's a vehicle, but I think I've seen it a bunch in the physiology world where people get all in on breath work because it helped them solve their asthma. Or they had some traumatic throat thing where their health just went to absolute dog shit because of these like different lymph problems in their neck and things like that. But I think some of the best high performers now have solved these problems really young, and they've become problem solvers, like kind of like we talked about earlier. But I also think there's focus and concentration built into some of this, but the people that like kind of scratch their own itches and create and are able to go from 0 to 1 on a product or an idea or a service or a podcast or whatever it ends up being, I think those are like the high performers, because they're, in essence, to overgeneralize it, they're solving a problem early, and that can be sparked by like overcoming an asthma early, or like I'm trying to make it positive. But and that positive, like winning something early, like those feelings and those endorphins and the dopamine and everything that comes from early success and celebrating your skill set, particularly through sports, but anything. Like I had buddies that were like wicked smart and winning debate stuff in high school, where like they got the same high from debate that I got from sports, and like it's all competition. And I think one of the biggest things is that the world is lacking is putting people under the spotlight. And in that realm, I think it's really important that we can keep showing up to work and we keep showing up to practice, but if you never put that stuff under the lights, it's never going to adapt fully. So I call it the arena raiser, where like, okay, it's time, like, and I try and push people earlier than they're ready, because everybody waits for the perfect time. But how fast can we put your skill under the lights? How fast can we compete at this new sport or this new hobby, or put your art out into the world? Like if it's painting, if it's a service, if it's a blog. But like, I think it's really important to put things out there, because that's the only way you're going to get, one, great feedback, and two, learn how to adapt fast.
Why are we so scared to put our work, put ourself out there?
Oh, I mean, that's a deep question. I don't even. I think in essence, like the realm of competition, like in competition and presentation too. Like, so don't get this twisted. I do abuse sports analogies, but I think the reason why we're scared to put anything out into the world is because we're uncertain of what we're going to get back, and that's competition. Like the competitive field is I say this all the time. Competitive field is massively vulnerable. It takes a lot of guts to go out there and put your entire soul on the line, and somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose, and it sucks. And so but it is vulnerability. Competition is vulnerability. Presentation of art and service or words is vulnerability. And our brains just absolutely hate uncertainty. And so, and my biggest problem, like you see it so much in life, where like, why is this person staying where they're at? Why is this person with all the good ideas not going, and those kind of things? People call it fear of the unknown. And I hate that. Like you can't fear something you don't know. But that's also what makes sports glorious, is because like you don't know who's going to win and who's going to lose. That's why a million eyes tune in. But in essence, it's not that they fear the unknown. They fear leaving the comfort of the known, because our brain and our physiology craves consistency and routine. And so we know where our next, obviously life and death, we know where our next meal and everything's coming from. Really important. Our world's not built for this NFL platform or TED Talk or whatever, like all these awesome platforms that share this grit and this knowledge and wisdom that people have accrued. But now it's the courageous idea to like, okay, anytime I feel this way, my physiology gets sympathetic, which like the butterflies in the stomach, the fear and all those kind of things, people run from it. Like that's a lighthouse. Sprint at that motherfucker and go. And so now, like, I use those feelings as basically breadcrumbs to where I want to go, where it's like people, I mean, like Ryan Holiday, the obstacle is the way. It's that same philosophy, but I don't think people really know physiologically their feelings when, like, those hold them back more than, like, like their ability to rationalize out of like, yeah, of course you have to like if I want to have a business, like people need to know I have a business, and or like I want to have a podcast, people need to know I have a podcast, and people shy away from that so much that it. I mean, it hurts. Like it hurts me to see people like back down on it, and when really, because I think you posted some stats on it, but I saw like I had actually started a podcast under the name Leaders These Days initially because I was really frustrated with basically how everybody was saying kids these days are the problem, everything, but the problem, no, leaders like created and coddled this generation of human, and it's on them to take responsibility, fix the school system, fix whatever needs to be fixed, like toughen people up and in essence. So I got tired of that excuse, so I wanted to learn about leaders and parents and all these things, and I just found out like I wasn't incredible at talking about that. But so I was probably like 5 episodes into that, and I saw this stat from like I think Apple or somebody pumped it out that like I want to say 97 or some crazy stat that 97% of podcasts haven't produced more than 2 episodes. And I was like, And I hadn't even released this first podcast yet. And so I said, like, I literally said, fuck it. That's going to die. I'll use some clips from one of the podcasts, but I'm going to do Chasing Edges. I love talking about it. I know about that world because I've lived it and like earned some of the knowledge and been curious about it. Why would I not talk about this? Like I love leadership and I'll preach personal leadership through this new platform, but at the same time, anyways, like that was my kind of jumping point where it's like one, it didn't have to be perfect, but 2, I just needed to go. And I think it was what I was trying to get at, but yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing that I admire about football, sports in general is there's a clear winner and loser, right? It's all right, this team scored more points. You had more tackles. Like there's a very clear like way of differentiating wins and losses. With podcasts, it's a lot more amorphous. With writing, you don't know what winning and losing looks like. So how do you judge your creative acts or the things that are more creatively inclined for if they're getting better and if you're actually winning?
Yeah, I think that's fun just because I think it's based off feel. Like you'll know when you're winning, losing. Your physiology follows suit. Like if you keep, in essence, winning, and in the process you're talking about the process and enjoying the process when there's no scoreboard up there. Like, yeah, it's really important to like at some point put your book out there and figure out if it sells or not. But like at the same point, like there's years before that you get to that point. And so again, tracking that subjective experience is really important, and understanding how you feel has tangible value, but we don't track that, you know? So it's really hard to go to war with yourself every day if you're basing everything off emotion and feel. So it's really important to know those emotions, know that physiology, and move forward because you know where you want to go. And so like I don't think people lack that like they're writing for an end game of a book or a blog or if you're recording conversations to put a podcast out there, but like or whatever it ends up being, like any of these want need, but like some days you're not going to feel like it. Like, okay, those are the biggest days to overcome. Or like some days you're not going to want to go under the lights, but you still got to go. And I get in that argument in the field all the time with how guys practice now. There's all these trackables where like, oh, guys aren't ready to practice today. Or they work too hard, they're too sore and all these CNS stats and heart rate variability and all these things. Like very rarely in a football season does anybody feel 100% on game day. So why would we not practice? So like I just think it all these tracking things in the realm of sports performance impedes performance at times. But like now when you get into like the tracking field, that doesn't impede performance. That only adds to the value of refinement in the process, in my opinion, where it's like, okay, I know that I can still produce pages when I feel bad, and I know I can produce pages when I'm dialed and I feel good. It's okay. Now, asking questions about what influences these process days. Is it like, are you tracking your sleep? Are you tracking what you're eating? Are you tracking who you're around? Are you tracking like who's taking and giving energy in your life? And then now this process and this creation of art outside of performance and where you can compete every day. Like, I think it's more important to track feel. And then like, yeah, obviously you want to try and correlate between feel and production, but I think everything can be tangibilized. And like in my world, like I can tangibilize your state at any point in the day. Like how fast are you breathing? How am I breathing? Like in that realm, your breath is always a tangible influence on your psychology. Like, are you stressed out? You're going to be a higher vertical mouth breather, or just even, they're always just these little microscopic differences. But like now, if I can control my state, and like that's why I'm a breath coach, because I love the fact that I can, like, I have more control over the unknown of the chaotic environment of the world, particularly the creation world. I know I can breathe myself into a better state. And so now it's like, okay, now I have some agency over like my ability to control my state. I have agency in this chaotic world where now, one, been tracking my experience, and I know when I feel like this, I can produce. Okay, how do I produce? And how do I keep enjoying this process? Like, how do I make a game? Like, again, because if I'm not putting something on the lights, how do I make a game out of wins? Like, how can I make wins and losses in the process? And like with my guys, like I'll have guys keep points like when they do all the recovery stuff or all their breath work. Like, hey, you get 3 points here. Hey, get this. Like, all I need is 35 points this week from you. Like, get it how you feel. And the same thing with writing. Maybe it's a page number, but maybe it's a brainstorm or pulling. Like, I need 35 different points from the research I've done. And we need to put in order. Like this, you like. I think again, like life is a game. Like life's a fun ass, awesome experience game. But you have to constantly like put effort into keeping it a game. And I think, and that's where like I joked about it earlier, where like football is extrapolated into it's a kid's game for grown-ups in essence. But like in essence, the goal is to, whatever it is, grow up as late as possible. And you can do that. Like I've seen so many people have what looks like a monotonous job to me, freaking love it. Mm-hmm. And it's because they make a game out of it. They enjoy their company. They push each other. There's so many different ways to excel in the process if you're not under the lights.
So you've brought up breath work a few times, and I'm curious, someone listening right now, they're like, oh wow, I'm mouth breathing right now. Why is that a bad thing to mouth breathe, first of all? And what are a breath work practice that they could do right now that could help improve their physiology?
Yeah, in the simplest form, just shut your mouth and like a lot of your problems go away, but it takes consciousness and awareness. So it's challenging for humans because it's focus, it's neuroplasticity to keep bringing back to there. But in the simplest form, there's 29. Nose cleans, humidifies the air, lower breath, triggers nitric oxide that perfuses more of a full lung, gets oxygen to the full lung. The biggest surface, it's a lower breath anatomically. So the biggest surface area of the lung is at the bottom of the lung. And so all these, benefits compound. And so now the mouth is a tool for like tidal volume. So it gets most volume of air in and out the fastest. And like, it's a benefit for performance, but at rest, it's a problem. So I approach breath. I solve everybody's sleep first as far as how you breathe, and then I solve your breath at rest, because if you can't breathe right at rest, you're not going to breathe right in performance. And it's really simple from that aspect. But people don't understand that like if you're breathing through your mouth, short, shallow, more rapid, you're actually shortcutting yourself, because you need, like, in essence, like you're hyperventilating very subtly. And hyperventilating just means breathing in excess of metabolic demand. And what happens is eventually your veins and arteries, even blood flow to your brain, constricts, because your body actually needs carbon dioxide to be present to release oxygen off the hemoglobin, the red blood cell. So people don't understand this fragile little balance. But like first and foremost, breathe through your nose all the way through zone 2 cardio. So everything, weightlifting, try and breathe through your nose for month or 2 months. Really, it's like 45 days to 60 days. And the benefits, aerobic capacity, diaphragmatic strength and endurance, all these things compound, and you just become a much better, more energetic, higher mood human. And then like breath practices, not rocket surgery. Like breath, there's only so much you can do with an inhale and an exhale. Ideally, I'd like to be mechanically sound, and like I have to be pretty hands-on to fix that. Like a functional breath is in through the nose, light and low, quiet breath. Like I always have people like take a big breath in through your mouth. What rises? My chest. Take a big breath in through your nose. Stomach rises. Like your breath needs to be lower for that oxygen point, the ability to brace the back, the access to lower lung, the more surface area, perfused oxygen, all these things. But if you're not mechanically sound, all we're playing with is the inhale and the exhale, and that's your remote control. So like I have everybody feel their carotid, their neck, get a really good feel on your pulse. Take a big, strong inhale through your nose, and then a long, slow exhale through your nose, and you'll feel your respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and that's the connection of your breath to your heart. In essence, like when the diaphragm's an umbrella, I'm using my hands if you're just listening, and when you inhale, it flattens. It not only pulls your lungs down, but also pulls your heart down. So the inhale, and this is the remote control now, everybody knows what a remote control does, but an inhale accelerates your heart rate. The volume goes up. The exhale slows the heart rate. Our problem in society today is most people are wired a little too hot. So, or they're too sympathetic, or they're agitated, stressed, like all these mental health issues are around, but we don't realize that our physiology is speaking a language to our brain to keep us in this state. We can breathe ourselves out of this state. In simplest forms, the first, I teach physiology as a language. It's a language that everybody right now needs to relearn because nobody speaks the language. So in the simplest form, the first 2 steps of that, nose is parasympathetic or down regulatory, calming. Mouth is sympathetic or up regulatory, fight and flight. Rest and digest, fight and flight. And then now that you know what anatomically you're supposed to be breathing through for the benefits, but also for the down regulatory parasympathetic tone, now we get to the inhale and exhale. Inhale, sympathetic, up regulatory, it's accelerating your heart rate. Exhale, parasympathetic, down regulatory. Spend a lot more time on your exhales, and it's as simple as slow breathing. Like there's so much awesome research out there on like literally like 5-6 seconds in, 5-6 seconds out, and then now you can just staircase it. So in for 6, out for 6 through your nose. Now you do 1-2. 1-2 ratios, inhale to exhale. In for 3, out for 6, in for 4, out for 8, whatever works for you. And use this, I use this with my humans to transition states, because I think it's an easy, tangible mental skill that everybody wants. I want to be able to show up for the right people in the right manner, or the right activity and opportunity in the right state. And I call these masks. I think the way you do one thing is the way you do everything is a little overplayed out, or like you're supposed to be the same person all day. Like, yeah, from like a character and morality standpoint, but people don't get the same you, and they shouldn't, because like when I'm in the weight room, you're gonna get a different Brian than like that's gonna go be the fun uncle, or that's gonna go give a that go give some presentation. So I say master your masks. And then breath is how you transition and control your state through these transitions. Like so many people struggle to like not bring work home with them that have kids, or to like a dinner, whatever it ends up being, or they want to wake up and be this energetic human and get into this mask to go attack the day. Well, you need some tools to get ready that's outside of caffeine or anything that's like you have to reach for and create dependency on. You don't have to depend on your breath. It's always there, but it's you're either a victim to what's going on or you're in control of it. So it's a worthy endeavor to learn how to control your breath and learn how to breathe yourself into these better states. And it takes 3 to 5 minutes of slow breathing to down reg. And like, I try and tangibilize every mental skill. I literally put, sometimes I'll swipe my hand over my face to put a mask on. But now physiologically, we have so many tangible markers that people don't even realize. So after you finish working out next time, you'll probably notice that your mouth is dry if you worked out pretty hard. Okay, now can I breathe to a point where my mouth salivates? That transition from sympathetic, fight and flight, to rest and digest. The salivation gland is part of that response. So now I can tangibilize it for someone that I'm not there to see their heart rate drop on their info or whatever. Hey, breathe until your mouth salivates. And then now you start recovering before you even walk out the door of the gym. But the same thing works for, like, so many people, again, don't realize what's happening in their physiology. There's this concept called email apnea, where people get emails and they hold their breath for a few seconds, or they immediately start breathing higher because their job's on the line, or, oh, I forgot that business call, or whatever. In through the nose, extend the exhales. Very simple things. 1-1, 1-2 ratio. You can breathe it into like 1-2-2 ratio, which is like any two numbers is in reference to inhale, exhale. Everything else is in reference to a box. Box breathing is another down regulator. It's just a trick on slow breathing, but it's 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 second out, 4 second exhale hold. It's just tricking your whole, tricking you into slow breathing. And so in essence, but you want to use this language to, again, get in control of your state. And you can always get out of those easy triggers of like emails and phone calls and stuff, and like, but make time for yourself. Okay, I need 3 minutes. I'm gonna breathe like after this call, and then I'll go to this meeting or whatever. It's just like it's really simple, and then it gets the nuances and complexity of it are really fun down the road where I can measure your CO2 tolerance. I can literally measure the expansion of your rib cage, and we can get your mechanics dialed so that like and teach how to be mobile and the rib cage and create lung capacity where I have a bigger lung available to me now because like modern society is not really built to be like a optimal breather. We're bent over, we're driving, we're sitting in desks, we're doing all these things. We're just destroying our lung capacity and access to it. So you learn these tools again. Now a bigger lung means a slower breath. I want to breathe slower. The problem right now is not like, how do I get more jacked up? And like Wim Hof stuff and like that, the faster breathing and the holotropic breathing, all that kind of stuff has its time and place. It's good, really good morning activity, really good to stimulate yourself if you're doing cold exposure to do it before then. Because like the reason why Wim Hof and them get jacked up, like the fast breathing, they're spending, you'll see them, it's 100% inhale, 50% exhale, and they do some tempo to it. They're spending a lot of time on the inhale. They're going up. What else is happening? Norepinephrine's jumping up, basically adrenaline in that capacity. They're getting more sympathetic, and they're also they're hyperventilating, so they're breathing in excess of metabolic demand, so they're driving CO2 out of the system, but they're just packing their cells with oxygen. So I look at it as a bell curve. So here's homeostasis, this starting line. Now you get jacked up, you keep getting jacked up, and then we're going to throw you in the cold. And so now you have prepared yourself for a stressor. So you're more likely to handle the cold because you have the norepinephrine and you have more oxygen to be prepared for what a usual response is an apnea in the cold. Like different variants of hold. So like their stuff makes sense, but like there's not a lot of times in life where that makes a lot of sense. But in essence, there's this whole spectrum of hyperventilation and slow breathing that you can find what works for you, but it's not tough. It's literally like slow breathing and fast breathing. You can breathe yourself where you want to go, but there's obviously a bunch of nuanced tactics there.
Talk to me about the cold and the sauna exposure. I've heard you talk about this on other podcasts. I enjoy doing this like just as a way of being, and it's really helped me. I don't know why it's helping me, but it makes me feel good. So I'm like, all right, I should follow that call. If it's a little challenging and it makes me feel good, like lean into it. So what's the signs there? What's going on? Why is it actually beneficial to go in the sauna and go in the ice?
There's so many reasons, but one, like I don't think you need to go much farther past it feels good. Like what else in your life why do you have to? Yeah, I want to know curiosity wise, but I wish I was like just stupid and ignorant to the fact where like this feels good, I'll do that, you know. And I think we can get back to that a little bit just because we're a little removed from nature. But one of the biggest reasons is because our bodies are built to handle it. And people don't realize that like the two biggest stressors on humans used to be environmental stress and food scarcity. We have those covered in spades. We have DoorDash, like we have AC, heat. We never leave a 70 degree bubble. And I say it too much. People go from their bubble from their house to their car to work and their car back home, and they never leave. And we have these systems for thermal regulation that are magical. They're so cool. And we're built to be these endurance humans and sweat and do all these things. Like our skin, like not a lot of animals can sweat and manage temperature like us. Like we are a phenomenon, and we choose not to get exposed to it. And so I think this is a little shot of nature back into everybody's life where you feel good because, again, the body has like 3 reactions to the cold. And in essence, it can determine that it's not cold and you don't got to do anything. It can mechanically respond, which in essence, like shivering is the mechanical response to heat up the body. And then it can burn brown fat and then start dumping different hormones into your system. But endorphins come with the exposure anyway. So you get the norepinephrine and you get the dopamine. And everybody wants dopamine. And but this is earned dopamine, which is a whole different factor. And Huberman and others, people can say this way better than me. But like that's a motivation thing. Like you want plentiful stores of dopamine. And you want it available, and we chase it, and like we can get it from chips, and we can get it from porn, and you can get from all this crap, but you can earn it, and like that's how you. And then like now you subtract different other influences, but besides the point, it's a feel-good chemical that we want and drives us forward. And in the essence, like, I'm not going to get too esoteric because there are actual physical benefits, but it's ice tub for me, forced meditation. My mind is nowhere else. How many other times in the day do you feel like that? Very rarely. So I try and get in the ice or a cold shower as much as possible and focus on my breath. It's hard to do and nobody wants to do it. It's like making your bed. Like, okay, like, I'm going to do this hard thing that also makes me feel good. And I also like coming home to a made bed, whatever. But like, you're just building a harder human to kill. And like, in my essence, it's resiliency and like the adaptive nature of a human. People pay millions of dollars for it. Like, people want these type of humans. And it's the same reason why college doesn't mean dick, because most of the time you go and show up to a job and they train you anyways. They don't even care about, they want to know if you have the tangible skills to learn what they do and potentially adapt to sales calls or whatever it ends up being and be adaptive in that sense. But they hadn't taught you that. And like, that's why I think like this ability to adapt is a separator, but besides the point. But also, I don't like the dopamine concept is pretty key in addiction as well. And so if you can get your dopamine from a natural source, that is also making your cells harder to kill. And part of now we'll get into the actual benefits, not just the mental capacity, because I just love the concept of struggling as medicine and like treating pain with pain. I think it's so massively underrated. It just frustrates me that people shy away from struggle and pain when really, and I'm reading this awesome book right now. I wish I had understood it and could translate it because it's just blowing my mind. It's called An Anatomy of Pain. And I can't even pronounce the author's name, but it's misunderstood how we treat pain and how we've learned to cope with pain, how all these drugs got into the market anyways from thousands of years ago, how 2 research articles dictated majority of the opioid crisis, all this stuff. Really cool book. But it basically says that
it's called An Anatomy of Pain by Dr. Abdul Ghalik Lal Khan.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult name to pronounce, but I just wanted to make sure people could search it if they want it.
Book, but it's opening my eyes again to and maybe this is confirmation bias, but a doctor's job's not to make you pain free. It's to make you healthy. And doctors are doctors of medicine. They're not doctors of optimal health. They have knowledge in the whole physiological Krebs cycle, everything to do with the body. Really cool, but they're professionals with hammers that medicine is one of their only tools. And then they can address sleep and all these things. That's a whole different rant. But the cold is an illustration of treating this pain with pain. Like a lot of, and again, I'm going to keep naming books because I love books, but Awareness by Anthony DeMello, one of my favorite books of all time. In that realm, yeah. Oh,
me too.
Point. All these books have changed my perspective on like what is comfort, what's like really our problem, what's not, what have we identified with. But like we have identified this pain-free lifestyle as being beneficial because it breeds comfort, and it's complete opposite. And so everything I want to do, like I said earlier, that like obstacles and pain and suffering are my lighthouse now, and this fear and anxiety of putting things out into the world are lighthouses for me now. Like the cold tub's no different. But back to the benefits, literally, so you'll hear like people throw around these words like heat shock and cold shock proteins. What's really happening is our body is a petri dish. And like a very simple illustration of this, like if you look at a petri dish, if you expose it to really hot temperatures and cold temperatures, weak cells that can't handle those temperatures die, and the remaining cells get fortified. So now you're just built. I always love be hard to kill concept, but the heat particularly below 40 degrees the cold below 40 degrees and heat above 180. The better research I think is done above 200, but in that realm, as long as your sauna is above 180, dry sauna, awesome. There's really cool research done at 212 as well. But anyways, like the coolest part about these benefits on top is the sauna. Now you get into mimics aerobic capacity. I've had a bunch of overweight clients just implement nasal breathing in sauna, and they just shed weight, and because it mimics an aerobic workout. We do longer sessions and things like that, but they can sit there and listen to podcasts. Or I have people watch Netflix in the sauna right now and things like that. I don't care, but it gets you mimicking this movement, and movement is the eternal medicine of the human body, and nobody can argue it. Same with strength training in that realm. That's longevity 101. And now the sauna gives you this aerobic capacity hit, and then now you're killing weak cells. The great research on red blood cells, white blood cells. If you time up the sauna as a tool post-workout hypertrophy, you're talking IGF-1 growth hormone, And then now it gets into like the ability to thermal regulate even better. Same as military goes to Arizona and does different heat treatments before they go to went to Afghanistan and things like that. It's those adaptations and resiliencies that like is so readily available at a minimal gym membership, or if you make the investment in a smaller sauna, whatever it ends up being. But now you start pairing these magical deals together, and that's where I love the sauna ice cycles. 3 minutes up to your neck in the ice, heavy sauna sweat, depending on temperature is subjective, but like get uncomfortable in there, sweat heavy, back to 3 minutes up to your neck in the ice, another heavy sweat, and then finishing cold. Just a dunk is all that's required. I get aggressive with me and my athletes where we hold our breath under the ice for a while. It gives you a harder like norepinephrine dump. You get this little more zen high almost. But the magic here is we're using our body's ability to thermal regulate, which in essence, so like people always scared at like, and I even skip my favorite point in the esoteric side of it. But besides the point,
what's your favorite part of the esoteric?
It reframes people's brains and their thinking, because we've been so conditioned. We've been on the conveyor belt. Everybody's listened to their mom and said like, hey, if you go outside without a hat and gloves, you're going to get sick and die. Wrong. Super wrong. And you're actually, if you don't do that, you're actually getting weaker, you know? And so I think it's funny, and like that's what I try and do, and that's what Awareness did for me, that book by Anthony DeMello. It changed my perspective. It reframed my brain on all these things I was identifying like with like my athletic history and that title in life. But the cold does that really quick. And then I've been in extreme levels where I've hiked in just my shorts, barefoot in the snow, things like that, and then or cut a hole in Lake Minnetonka in Minnesota and got 3 minutes in the cold and then stood out there and worked out for an hour. Like all these things, like, and I didn't get sick. I probably got healthier. So it's just like in that realm, the ability to reframe somebody's mind is huge. And I think the cold is just like a gateway to, okay, what else do I have wrong? What else was taught to my life that's completely and utterly wrong? And that's the power of questions again. But to the last benefit of this contrasting, heat, so like heat, vasodilator, accelerates the heart rate, does all these things. Dilator meaning expand in size. And then now you get into the cold, the body's reaction to cold. Part of the mechanics of shivering, the next line of defense is shunting of the blood to protect the vitals. So now you have all these little muscles on your veins and arteries that are built for this that, again, we don't use going from our house to our car to our work to car and back home. We need this elasticity. We need this ability. And that's where some really out of shape people, when they get in the cold the first time, it hurts. It hurts. It hurts really bad, particularly feet and hands. And they'll get out and they'll jump out. I've had black belt in jiu-jitsu. It had been really comfortable for a while, jumped out after 45 seconds in the cold. When I try, then most of my women have a higher pain tolerance and they stay in there no problem. And so it's just weird. It's fun. I do have my own little social experiments going on with it. But in essence, same way, I've had a Delta Force guy hop out, like one of our best soldiers, and like it, again, relationship with cold water and pain has a different relationship from selection and stuff like that. So it's fun to see the nuances, but that vasoconstriction starting in the cold, vasodilation, you're actually pumping all this blood and lymph through your body. And like anytime I get a sore back from like deadlifting or squatting, I sauna ice and it just gets obliterated. And people don't understand that fluctuation of soreness. Like we understand pumps and everything mechanically in like the industrial world, but we're a pump. And so you can flush out pain and soreness there, and you feel incredible after. Like, don't listen to anything else I said. Just go do it and see how you feel. And if you are not euphoric, like, holler at me. You probably did it wrong. So it's just like, in that world, it's just like, that's a great recovery modality. I've had NHL guys lose as many as like 900 calories doing an hour of that. And so it's stealing. It's literally, the sauna is a health and benefit stealing. It's absolute robbery. And in that realm, like, that's why I push people towards it. Same with the breath. And now you can always make your breath, again, tangible variable there, because now the beauty of the cold, like I call the cold tub basically my stadium for athletes, because I can't stress my athletes out too many different ways without hurting them, you know? So like I get cold and suffocation, and like that's my world. And people are scared of suffocating, and people are scared of the cold. And so if you can get them in there and teach them that, like, if you control your breath in an environment, you can own the environment. really quickly they'll start to pick up the skills. And I usually don't overcoach people before they get in the cold or like say the stuff I've said on here already, because I want to see how they naturally react. And most people it's or like very short, very shallow. Nobody intuitively responds to the tool set that we've actually been given to down regulate. So now, like, how many times did they breathe the first 3 minutes? Most of the times it's 100 plus. My metric for myself, because I've done thousands of reps at this point, is like I take 8 breaths in 3 minutes. I go through box breathing. I do 1 rescue breath, because like a big problem, like anybody with kids out there that hyperventilate when they get upset and things like that. The problem is not that they need to quote unquote breathe. Like people have always told you to breathe, but nobody's coached you how to breathe in that essence. That hyperventilation, they're full on air. Like they're breathing wrong at this point. Like we need to get them to exhale and get that next breath so the oxygen gets in. They don't stay this plugged up person of oxygen. But anyways, teaching real-time tools how to handle stress and anxiety. Now you become more resilient in any scenario where it's like, okay, like I'm getting anxious before I go public speak. Okay, I can regulate. And then, because then people don't even understand breathing and public speaking are just all these extended exhales of talking. And people get worn out and their energy's blasted after that. It's because they probably didn't prepare breath-wise mentally. You can't not expend energy talking, but you can be more prepared for it with higher CO2 tolerance and things like that. So it's just like, that's why I love the heat and cold, but it's also why I love the breath as this intersection between mind and body to give you some control back in stressful scenarios.
I love the tip to track the breath in the cold, because previously what I do is I take cold showers, and what happens is, to figure out if I am comfortable with the cold, I ask myself, can I pee right now in the shower? And I can normally, and I do. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, like if I'm comfortable with this cold, then I'm comfortable. If I'm so comfortable that I can pee in this scenario, then I'm so comfortable that if a high stress-inducing scenario happens in my day-to-day, I will be calm as well. But the breath is a little more scientific there.
But dude, you're still speaking physiology. And like that's the thing where, again, people get butterflies because they're shifting to shifting to sympathetic. So like rest and digest, like pissing and shitting is part of digestion. So if I can always same as like the salivation is rest and digest, part of that process. But people get butterflies and they get nervous. Why? Because they're shifting into sympathetic mode. So if you get butterflies or like tight butthole is a real thing. Same with guys have to piss before a game, or they have to take a dump before the game. They're physiologically transitioning masks, and it's happening whether you want it or not. And so now, okay, how do I get more control of this? But I love that you found that intuitively that, okay, like this knows I'm still in control and like still calm enough to do this. And it's just physiology. Like that's the only language our brain speaks. And like, that's it.
Well, I like to end these podcasts with a challenge for people. A challenge points to the place in your heart. You take all this information, you learn, but then it's like, what do you actually do with it? Do you have a challenge that comes to mind from everything we spoke about, or something we haven't?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many challenges in the physiological world. Because I think I gave people enough kind of get-go to hit the sauna ice and enough tools in the breathwork world. I would challenge people, when you initially get the thought to go do something or create something or move or work out or eat healthy, whatever it is, to fucking go. And because you need to realize who you're fighting, and you're fighting your physiology. And the reason you're fighting your physiology is because we live in a world now where all of our bare necessities are handed to us. And so the couch, like literally, I tell people like, it's tough to get off the couch. It's because you're doing everything right. You're doing everything your physiology. You're completely right to sit on the couch. And like people to know they're okay there. Why are you okay there? Because everything in your physiology says, when I have food, water, shelter, the bare necessities, to relax and save up energy for the next, we'll call it shelter, build, hunt, fight, mating, all these things. Like that's what we're supposed to save energy for. But right now, those no longer exist. So we need to understand that everything that feels good about that couch is literally our physiology, are literally a millennia of evolution telling you to do, and you're doing the right thing. So you have to create this friction point that says, I no longer want this comfort. I want to do something and I want to create. You need to fight your physiology. And 101, you're always going to be fighting yourself. And that's why I love books like The War of Art and things like that, because like it identifies who we're fighting and it identifies who the problem is. And 99 times out of 100, it's you. And you need to realize how to get in control of yourself. I think the breath is a great tool for that, but you need to understand when you don't want to move is when you got to move.
Brian Peters, ladies and gentlemen, all of his links are down below. Where is the one place you would like to point people to connect with you further?
Yeah, just direct access to me is Brian_Peters10, and then everything chasingedges.com and the podcast and everything's there, and my performance stuff's there. I'm transitioning websites right now. Hopefully tomorrow everything will be up on chasingedges.com. So, but no, dude, I appreciate you having me on, dude. You're electric, and I said it before the podcast, but dude, everything about what you're doing and how you're doing it literally just screams hustle and curiosity. And dude, that's a winning recipe. And I literally am so hyped to see where you go. And I know you don't need my validation or anything like that, because it's truly, it's authentic in you. And I hope the best for you, brother.
Brian, thank you so much for the kind words and for the masterclass in high performance secrets. Thank you so much for spending the time here today. Really grateful for you.
Easy. Be well.